Hey everyone, thanks for joining us for another deep dive. When we were going over listener questions, this one really stood out. Someone wanted to know how, the people we hang out with, our friends, family, even our own pride can, mess with our faith journey.
That's a great question. And this clip from thickshades.com that we're diving into today, it really digs into this whole idea.
Yeah, so let's jump right in. What was it about this source that really stood out to you?
What I found fascinating is how it presents faith. It's not this fixed, unchanging thing,
Yeah.
but it's something that's constantly being molded by our environment, by the choices we make. Like picture clay on a potter's wheel.
I like that visual. Okay, so that makes me think of that saying, evil communications corrupt good manners. It's like one of those things you hear and you're like, okay, grandma, but it's like actually from the Bible, right?
It is. Straight from 1 Corinthians 15.33. And it's crazy how relevant it still is today. Think about it. If you ever notice how being around negativity, certain people, certain relationships, it can just drain you.
Oh, totally. It's like that one friend who's always negative, and after a while you catch yourself being negative too. It's like your energy is contagious.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And the source takes that idea of negative influence and connects it to pride, specifically in the context of faith, because it's this weird paradox, right? It's good to feel joy, even pride, when our faith is strong. But the source talks about how that pride can easily become unhealthy. We become blind to our own vulnerabilities.
Which is kind of like those Pharisees in the Bible, right? They were all about the rules, but they missed the whole point of what faith was really about.
Exactly. The source uses them as the ultimate example of how pride can lead to this superiority complex. We start thinking, oh, that won't happen to me. I'm strong in my faith. But that's when we need to be most careful. The source argues that true strength comes not from self-reliance, but from recognizing our need for God, from being poor in spirit.
Okay, poor in spirit. Now that phrase always kind of threw me off. Shouldn't we be striving for abundance in all areas of
I
life?
know, it sounds counterintuitive, right? But in this context, poor in spirit is about acknowledging our limitations. It's about saying, hey, I don't have all the answers, and I need help. Yeah, it's approaching our faith with humility.
So it's more about being open and recognizing that we're not perfect. And that's how we actually grow and learn. And it's interesting, the source brings up the story of Peter, the Apostle Peter, one of Jesus's closest disciples. Even He denied knowing Jesus when things got tough.
And it's not that Peter's faith wasn't genuine. I mean, the dude walked on water with Jesus. But that story shows just how powerful external influences can be. Even someone so close to Jesus could be swayed by fear, by pressure.
Okay, so we've got this potent mix of bad company and our own pride, that can lead us astray. So what are we supposed to do? Build a bunker and become hermits?
Well, the source does emphasize the importance of choosing our company wisely. Proverbs 13.20 says it best. Walk with the wise and become wise, for a companion of fools suffers harm.
So surrounding ourselves with people who uplift us, challenge us in a good way, encourage our faith, that's huge EE. But it's not about cutting ourselves off from the world entirely, is it? Because even Jesus spent time with people who didn't exactly follow God.
Exactly. And that's such a crucial point.
Yeah.
It's not about judging others or thinking we're better than anyone else.
Right. It's like you don't have to just disappear into a cave. But it's also not about just jumping into any situation no matter what.
Exactly. And the source actually uses this metaphor of being unequally yoked. Have you ever heard of that?
Yeah, I think so.
It's from 2 Corinthians, let me see, 2 Corinthians 6.14. And you usually hear it about marriage, right?
Yeah.
A believer shouldn't be unequally yoked with an unbeliever.
Right. I've heard that.
But here's where it gets interesting. The source takes that idea, and it's not just about romantic relationships. It's about all our close connections. It could be friends, coworkers, even family. And recognizing when that relationship might be pulling us away from our values, our faith.
Oh, okay. So it's like a gut check for any close relationship in our lives. Are there any red flags we should be looking out for?
It's less about red flags, I think. It's more about just being really honest with ourselves.
Yeah.
About the impact someone has on us. Do we find ourselves compromising our values just to fit in? Do we walk away from time with them feeling drained or discouraged? Those could be signs that maybe something needs to change.
And changing things doesn't always mean ending the relationship, right? It could be about setting boundaries, having those tough conversations, or even just being mindful of how much H time we're spending with that person.
Exactly. It's about taking ownership of our spiritual well-being and making choices that nurture our faith, even if those choices are kind of difficult. And this goes back to what we were talking about earlier with pride. This is where humility is so important.
Oh, I see what you're saying. So instead of thinking, oh, I'm strong enough to handle this situation, even if it seems kind of icky, It's about being honest with ourselves and with God and admitting that we do have limits.
Exactly. It's about recognizing that none of us are perfect.
Right.
We're all works in progress. And even with the best intentions, we can still be influenced in negative ways.
So it's about giving ourselves grace, but also taking responsibility for our own spiritual growth. It's like tending a garden. You have to pull out the weeds, but
Mhm.
you also have to fertilize the good stuff.
Such a good analogy. And that's what I love about this source. It doesn't just give us a bunch of rules. It gives us a way to think about these gray areas in life with wisdom and with grace.
And a big part of that wisdom seems to be this idea that faith isn't passive. It's an active pursuit. We have to align our actions with what we say we believe. It's like that whole walking the walk thing, right?
Right. It's about truly living our faith, not just in words, but in how we treat other people, how we respond to challenges, how we live our lives every single day.
And it's interesting because I was thinking about that saying, actions speak louder than words. And it made me think of this one part in the source that really got me. It was talking about how even demons believe in God.
Oh, yeah. Let me see. That's from James 2.19. It says, "You believe that God is one, you do well. Even the demons believe and shudder."
Right. It's kind of freaky when you think about it. Like if even demons believe
Yeah.
and it doesn't get them anywhere, then just saying, I believe, clearly that's not enough.
It's not.
Yeah.
And the source uses that verse to show how true faith goes way beyond just acknowledging that God exists.
Yeah.
It's about really wanting a relationship with him, surrendering to his will, letting our beliefs actually change how we think and act. It's a whole different ballgame.
Yeah, it's like that saying, faith without works is dead. It's not enough to just go through the motions.
Right.
We have to let our faith influence how we treat people, how we face challenges, how we live our lives every single day.
And that brings us right back to choosing our company wisely, because the people we're surrounded with, they have this huge impact on whether we can actually live out our faith. They can either lift us up and hold us accountable, or they can drag us down and make it easier to compromise.
It's like having a workout buddy for our faith. Someone to cheer us on, push us further, help us stay on track when we're ready to give up on that last rep.
I love that analogy. And just like with a good workout buddy, the source reminds us that we got to be intentional about who we surround ourselves with. We need people in our lives who inspire us to grow spiritually.
So as we're wrapping up this deep dive into faith, company, and pride, what's the one thing you really want our listener to walk away with today?
You know, I think it comes down to this. Faith is a journey. It's not some finish line we're all trying to cross. And just like with any journey who we choose to travel with, it makes all the difference. When we surround ourselves with people who lift us up, who challenge us to grow, when we stay humble and remember that we're not perfect, that's how we can navigate all the ups and downs of life and faith, and do it in a way that's real and actually fulfilling.
So well said. I love that. So much to think about. Thank you so much for taking this deep dive with us. And to everyone listening, we hope this has given you some things to ponder and maybe even inspired you to take a look at the company you keep. Until next time, keep those deep dive requests coming.
Yeah.
And remember, the journey of faith, it's always better together.